Good. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome everyone who is with us here this evening and everyone joining us remotely and everyone watching via the live stream. We're glad that you're with us. The second item is the land acknowledgement. And I guess Vice Deputy Mayor, do you have the land acknowledgement? Could you read that? Sorry, I didn't mention that to you before we started, but if you could do that, that would be appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand that this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. Item 4 is additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda. We do have one addition to the agenda. It's that item 12.1, a close to public session, be added to the November 28th, 2022 Committee of the Whole agenda. So I guess we'll get a resolution on that. Your mover and seconder to do that, the Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Davinsky. And we'll ask all in favor of that. That's carried. Okay, now we're moving on to open forum. We don't have any open forum requests, so we're on to delegations, and we do have 3 delegations this evening. And I just remind all of our delegations that council's allotted 10 minutes for each of our delegations. So we would appreciate it if you could do your best to keep to those timelines. And our first delegation then is Cheryl Karansky, Canadian Federation of University Women, and she's here to talk to us about the École Polytechnique Vigil on December 6th, 2022. Cheryl, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Charbonneau, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to council tonight. I am here on behalf of the Canadian Federation of University Women, which is a leading non-partisan organization raising the social, economic, and legal status of women and girls. There are 95 clubs across Canada, around 7,500 members, and our club here in Saugeen Shores has been operating in our community for over 35 years, and we have about 95 members. The reason we're appearing before council tonight is to raise awareness on the issue of violence against women. In 1989, a lone gunman walked into the École Polytechnique in Montreal and gunned down 14 young engineering students. They were all women. He separated the men from the women and he let the men go. Before he opened fire, he yelled, "I hate feminists." The year after the Montreal massacre, which that event has come to be known, the Canadian Federation of University Women organized vigils across the country, including here in Saugeen Shores, to remember the 14 women that were lost. This year, we'll hold our 32nd vigil on December 6th, 12 noon, Coulter Parquet, to remember the 14 engineering students, to mourn the loss of more than 1,400 Indigenous women and girls who are missing or murdered, and to advocate on behalf of all women who live with sexual harassment, assault, and other forms of violence every day, to once again say this must change. November 25th to December 10th marks the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is one of the most pervasive human rights violations in the world. This campaign calls for the elimination of violence against women, girls, and gender diverse people. Gender-based violence is a broad term and can take many different forms, which are listed on the sheets that you were given. What's important to note is that in Canada, Indigenous women and girls living in rural or remote communities are disproportionately impacted by gender-based violence. And since COVID-19, a shadow pandemic of increased intimate partner violence was declared. In April of 2020, the Assaulted Women's Helpline of Ontario reported 400% increase in calls. And a further 6 in 10 women globally, when surveyed, reported that sexual harassment in public spaces had worsened since the beginning of the pandemic. That statistic came out through the UN Women's Forum in 2021. And the situation seems really bleak, but there's a lot that we can do, both individually and as organizations. CFUW Southport is planning the vigil. We're sharing the 16 days on our social media platforms. We're hanging posters. We have hung posters actually this week in high traffic areas, and we're sending out a press release on our position against gender-based violence. We would ask that the town lower the flag to half mast on December 6th, that councillors use their social media sites to highlight the campaign. And we also ask and hope that you can all attend the vigil December 6th, 12 noon, Coulter Parkette. We're also asking for donations. The Canadian Women's Foundation through Statistics Canada reported recently that 3,491 women and 2,724 children sleep in shelters every night because their home isn't safe. So through the vigil, we raise money for the 3 women's shelters here locally. We also want to ask people to support those who disclose their experience of gender-based violence. It's really important that when they tell their story that we believe it and we let them know that they are not to blame. We also ask council that you support Bill C-21, which has passed second reading. It's a national freeze on the sale, purchase, or transfer of handguns by individuals. Firearms cause harm to Canadian women and girls in a multitude of ways. When guns are in the home, they are the single greatest risk factor in deadly domestic violence. It's also important to note there's more violence against women in politics than ever before. And in 2022, the CFUW passed a resolution trying to prevent violence against women in politics. Another emerging area of concern is systemic violence perpetuated in recreational and professional sports. You would have to be living under a rock to not know about the Hockey Canada scandal. And then a damning report came out on October 9th, 2022 about sexual abuse in women's soccer. We know we are never going to achieve gender equality until women are safe. Safe at boardroom tables, safe in council chambers, safe on sports fields and in hockey arenas, and most especially safe in their own homes. I just want to, because I do have a few more minutes before I close, I just want to tell you a little story. Sometimes I said earlier, things sometimes seem very bleak because we do this year after year after year, and 32 years later, the statistics don't seem any better. And so sometimes I think, is this doing any good? But I want you to know that December 6th, just before the pandemic hit the following spring, a young woman walked past Coulter Parkette just after 12 noon when we were holding our vigil, because as I said, we've held it every year for 32 years. And she was going into the drugstore. And when she went into the drugstore, she asked the woman behind the counter what was going on at the park across the street. And the woman told her that it was a group that met every year and had been meeting for many years, trying to stop violence against women. And the woman left, and we didn't know that that encounter had even taken place. And she lived in rental housing. She was new to our community, new to this country, and she lived in rental housing in the south end of the city. And there's an older gentleman that lives down that end of town, and he comes to the vigil every single year. And he always puts a couple of dollars in the box when we're raising money. And she knocked on his door, and she said she had seen him in the park And she was wondering if she could use his phone. That when her husband went to work, he took all of their cash and credit cards and he took his phone, and that he was abusing her and she wanted to call her family. And she saw him at the vigil. And so she thought he might be able to help her. And so, of course, he let her use his phone. She made an international call for quite some time. She was speaking in another language. And about 3 weeks, she thanked him, and he saw her in the parking lot and across a fence in the backyard for a couple of weeks after that. And shoveling snow mainly is what he tells us. And didn't say anything because he didn't know if it was safe for him to say anything. And then about 3 weeks later, an older gentleman came to his door and through his daughter translated his thanks for this man helping his daughter when she was in need. He said that he had come to Canada to take her home where she would be safe. So I tell you that story because everything we do, from taking a moment to post it on our social media platforms, to attending the vigil, to making a small donation to the women's shelters, we never know the difference that it's having in someone's life, and it's important. So I'll close tonight by thanking you for the time, by urging you to make violence against women and gender-based violence a priority in every single way that you can. Thank you.
Thank you. And just before I go to questions, I will say that I'm quite confident that the municipality can commit to lowering our flags to half mast on the 6th of December. So we will do that. And I'm sure, well, certainly I and many of my colleagues will be in attendance on the 6th.
Thank
So
you.
are there questions or comments? I actually see Councillor Mayette's hand up. I assume your hand up on purpose there, Dave. Okay, so we'll go to you first and then we'll go to the Deputy Mayor.
All right, I'd just like to start by saying thanks, Cheryl, for your presentation and your dedication to this important cause. I have been to your vigil many times, and I always find it very moving. And that story was very heartwarming to know that it's moving not only to the participants, but you've had some impact on the community, and that's just wonderful. Certainly, there's a lot more needs to be done. The one point that you mentioned that I have to take a little bit of exception to is you're asking for support of Bill 21, the gun control bill proposed by the federal government. It's the position of myself and many others who live in a rural setting or even an urban setting, for that matter, that this was an ill thought out law and that it unfairly infringes upon the rights of legal gun owners. But that's another debate that we won't get into tonight. I'd just like to say, please keep up the good work, and I hope to see you on December the 6th at the Senate at the Golden Parquet.
Thanks very much. And Bill C-21 is certainly supported by the Canadian Federation of University Women, so it's just important that you know that. Thanks.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cheryl, thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to acknowledge that your social media feed, you'll find it on Facebook, I believe, under CFUW Southport. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
It's not always easy to find things, and the postings that are going up there every day, reflecting different topics on the days of the 16 days that you mentioned in your presentation, they should be read by a lot of people. So CFUW Southport is how you get there. I did want to take an opportunity publicly to thank the CFUW Southport group for stepping up and arranging for the all candidates meeting. You started off by saying that your group was an all-partisan or a non-partisan group, and that is a very real reflection of that, and the community benefited, and we all benefited from that too. And I was moved by the story. I think sometimes people think that these issues are somewhere else. No, they're right here. It might be the person who lives right beside you, as the example in the story that you gave, or it might be somebody that you work with. So always important to just pay attention and to, in subtle ways, let people know that you're there to help them. But thank you very much for the presentation.
Thanks, Diane.
Yeah, thank you, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Cheryl, for your presentation. It's one event I never want to miss. try to make it every year to Coulter Plaza, and this year I'm out of country, unfortunately, so I won't be able to make it, but I just wanted to thank you for all you do. I will promote it on my social media site for sure. And I certainly will make a donation to the women's shelter. If you could just let me know where or how I may do that. Is there contact person, mail address? How would I go about doing that, Cheryl?
There will be a box at the vigil, but if you're not there, you can certainly e-transfer. And unfortunately, I don't have that in front of me, but I do believe that the e-transfer is on the posters that are around town, and I can get that to somebody.
If you could just email it, and I can get that done.
Happy to email
it. Thanks again for all you do, Cheryl.
Thanks.
Good. Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Cheryl. Good evening, Cheryl. It's good to see you again. And thank you very much for this presentation. I too salute the CFUW for all the work it does, not only now, but throughout the entire year. But talking about now, the statistics don't lie. And I suggest each one of us may know someone that has been through this nightmare from hell. And they've got to come to an end. And we've got to do everything we can. Cheryl, I will be there on December 6th. I might even take Mike Myatt's money too. I'm sure that gets donated. But I will be there. And God bless for doing such wonderful work in this regard.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there further comments? I think my colleagues have said it all, Cheryl. I mean, the work that you guys do in this vigil is always very important. And, you know, we can see, and you mentioned it, how misogyny and even violence can creep into the political realm. And it's a major issue affecting women in politics and even in municipal government and even in local municipal government. We've seen it in the last year or two, even in Bruce County, where misogyny can quickly become part of the discourse at councils. And that's a thing we have to remain ever vigilant against. And we have to remember the impact that things like that have, the spillover it has, and the example it sets, and the consequences that it causes across the community when leaders in the community behave in that way. And we have to stand against it. So it's good you guys come here every year and you give us this presentation every year, and it's essentially the same presentation, and we need to hear it every year because the problem doesn't go away, and in some cases it gets worse. So I look forward to seeing you again next year. I hope the situation is better by then, but I do hope you'll be back in a year and every year to remind us of the importance of this issue, and we'll be seeing you on the 6th. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so we're moving on then to our second delegation, which is from Tracy Murray of the Saugeen Memorial Hospital Foundation, and she's here to give us an update. Bring in Ms. Murray.
Hello, everyone. It's
Hello.
nice to see you all again. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm just waiting for my presentation to pop up on the screen. Can everyone see?
Yep, we see it just fine. Go right ahead.
Wonderful. So I'm just here tonight. Just a quick update on successes from the Hospital Foundation of 2022 and what's coming up in 2023. If I could get the next slide, please. So obviously the biggest news in 2022 for the Hospital Foundation was the Bring Tom to Town CT scanner campaign, which was wildly successful beyond anything I could have ever imagined. We raised $3 million in less than 10 months for the CT scanner, and we are now officially in the construction queue with the vendor, and we hope to see the CT on site in the late summer of 2023. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone in our community and beyond who supported this project. Your support was just absolutely tremendous, and I'm so ever grateful and thankful. We can't wait to announce the CT arrival and have that operational in 2023. Next slide, please. So what's next for the Hospital Foundation is right now we are in the midst of our annual Light the Way holiday campaign, which runs every November and December till the end of the year. Funds this year will go towards a variety of capital list items, which we are now focusing on. All of our attention earlier this year went to the CT scanner campaign, and now that that's complete, we can focus on the other needs in the hospital. And there are a variety of them throughout various departments at the hospital this year. And really what I wanted to remind everyone is to please mark your calendar for next Thursday, December 8th, is our annual radiothon at 97.9 The Bruce, taking place 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I would love for everyone to stop by or call in if you can't make it out in person. We love to have people drop in, call in, donate, share any stories you have about your experience at the hospital. We love to hear those. We always have lots of prizes and giveaways. It is truly the funnest day of the year, I always think. So we hope to see you there. Next slide, please. Our plans for 2023, we do find we need to keep up with the increase of demand on the hospital services due to the rapidly growing population. We're always funding things like equipment replacement, enhancing current services, and facility updates, which means we as a foundation are now looking to have to fundraise $2 million a year to keep up with these demands. So what are we doing in the coming year? We are adding some new and exciting things for the community. We do another, as opposed to like the way we have a second direct mail campaign that we run in every May, our spring campaign. So this year we're actually expanding that to create more awareness, and we're adding some community events the last weekend of May. We'll have more information on that in the new year, but we do have some fun things planned, some family events and some events for grown-ups, just to get new donors to come out, to become aware of the foundation and what we do, and to have some fun and give back to the community. Next slide, please. Of course, Grand Fondo, we host every August, third weekend in August. This year, we have plans to expand the event. If you're not familiar with Grand Fondo Lake Huron, presented by Bruce Power and Suppliers, it is typically a cycling ride the third Sunday in August. And this year, we are actually expanding the event to make it more of a weekend. Almost, I think the stats were 47% of our participants come from out of town. And that could be anywhere from Owen Sound to a number of our participants come from Ottawa, Toronto, all across the province. We do get riders from other provinces, the US, and usually a couple from overseas. So we thought it would be nice to be able to offer more for those people to do while they are here visiting. They do tend to come up for the weekend because they are traveling. They book hotel rooms, they dine in local restaurants, they shop in local stores. So this event does have tremendous economic impact for the community. We'll be offering, and again, none of these things are totally finalized. We are still working on them, but our hopes are, and we're looking pretty positive, that we'll be able to offer our regular routes of 30, 70, and 110 kilometers, but the routes are refreshed this year. So for those riders who have ridden in the Grand Fondo every year since its inception, this will offer some new variety for everyone with new routes. We're offering an additional route, which will be a gravel route. Gravel riding is becoming quite popular and is sort of a different demographic. So we'll have an 80-kilometer gravel route added to the event. And as well, I am hoping that we will have a 10-kilometer route for those who maybe think 30 kilometers is a little too much to try out. It gives them a chance to join in the Grand Fondo Fun with a bit of a smaller route. And we're adding a kids event on Saturday in Port Elgin, which helps us include Port Elgin in our weekend of celebrations and festivities. This will be a 1-kilometer loop around the Plex area with a variety of activity stops for kids to enjoy along the way. And we're hoping to have a little barbecue afterwards for them. And then Saturday night in the Coliseum, we are going to bring out the first annual Bruce County Bash. So this will be open to our riders and their families, and we'll also be selling tickets to the community so everyone can come out and have some fun. There'll be live entertainment, bar service, food trucks, and some other fun things going on, which I don't want to divulge just yet, but it should be a great evening of fun and help round out our weekend of the Grand Fondo. So my hope is that we can continue to grow this event even bigger, better as the years come, and it becomes something so well known beyond what it is now. It is our second biggest fundraiser, and it could become our first largest fundraiser each year. So that's what we have on tap for 2023, and I believe that's my last slide. So I just want to say thank you again for having me here tonight, and we hope to see you out at Radiothon, or at least hear from you, call in and share your stories and make a donation if you can. And as always, like and share our social media posts.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Tracy. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee? Councilor Davinsky.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you to Tracy. Tracy, thank you for your presentation. Very positive. You say you're raising funds for a variety of items throughout the hospital. And I always like some specifics that we can hang on to. You said it would happen in patient care, lab, physiotherapy, and so on. Can you give us a couple examples of exactly what we're going after?
I sure can. Off the top of my head, in physiotherapy, we're looking for a new ultrasound unit to help out in that department. The lab has a few pieces of equipment. I know a new microscope is one of those. On the inpatient unit, 2 special beds, bariatric beds, and patient lifts and slings for transferring patients from their beds, all have to do with patient comfort and care. There are some nuts and bolts type of items that you don't see maybe when you're at the hospital, but they operate in the background. A lot of IT equipment and infrastructure to support equipment that we've purchased before, like the new X-ray machine. That machine doesn't operate without the correct software. IT integrations to help physicians speak to one another in different facilities, sort of like on the spot transfer of information and images to support that type of work. There's always oncology. We have patients in our region who use the oncology department in Owen Sound, and they are in need of new services. They are IT wise. So.
Thank you. And finally, to council, I guess I will be taking part in the radiothon. I think I'm set for a 3-hour or 4-hour stint on air. And of course, I will go to the radiothon armed with my naughty and nice list, which means for those that don't know, you're on the naughty list until you donate whatever you can to the radiothon. And once that's done, I'll pop you right over to the nice list and let everybody know. The mayor's been through that once before. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Very good. Well, I guess we'll want to be on your nice list, John. We'll do our best to get there. The deputy mayor.
Thank you. Tracy, I was asked the other day if there were any more of those Monopoly games available. Are there any more, and where can somebody get them?
We have, I think, maybe about 15 copies left. We have them at our office, and we will have them at Radiothon for sale. So there are a few. They make great Christmas gifts, but they're almost gone. So you want to get your hands on them now. Okay,
and my real comment was, I remember seeing you at the barbecue that was in the parking lot at Rexall, which was a celebration of meeting a goal very early on in a campaign when you thought it was going to go on longer. And I know you were supposed to be on vacation, but you were there.
Yeah.
That was one of the nicest community events we've ever had. Thank you for putting that on. But the reason for doing it was pretty powerful too. And that huge billboard over the parking lot just hammered the message home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Are there further comments, members? Well, thank you, Tracy, for coming in and giving us this update. You've got some awesome stuff going. It's great to see the Grand Fondo expanded and doing even more, and having an evening event and 2 days. I think that's going to be it's a great thing for the hospital foundation, but also just a great thing for the town. What a great economic development thing for the town, right? So that's a great thing that you're doing there, and I know we all appreciate it a lot. And also on the CT scan, it's interesting. We just had a meeting, I guess last week, of the Bruce County. Actually, it was an orientation meeting, but we were hearing from the director of paramedic services there, and he was talking about how busy a year they had last year in paramedic services. In fact, they did almost 1,000 calls just in August across Bruce County and paramedics. A super busy year. And one thing he mentioned was how excited he was that we were going to have CT scanners, hopefully, in Southampton and in Kincardine, and how that would reduce the distance that our paramedics would have to travel with patients, having to carry them out to Owen Sound for that service. They wouldn't have to do that anymore. And that would mean more time in our communities serving our residents rather than being on the road or waiting in line at emergency rooms or whatever. And so it's just the trickle down effect of the positive and the benefit that something like that creates across the system is really hard to overstate. And so the benefit of all of this fundraising, and I know it's year after year raising, just a base of $2 million a year. It's a huge amount of money. But you guys are so good at it and you generate so much success and the public is behind you. And the benefit of all of that means a better healthcare system, a more functional healthcare system for all of us that works. And I know that's a hot issue across Ontario and Canada right now. But I guess people should just rest assured we have the best people like you working on it. And we're going to be, everybody should be confident we're going to have the best service possible in our communities because of the work of the foundation and because of the work of people who work for Grey Bruce Health Services. So anyway, thank you very much for taking the time to come in, and we'll be seeing you before long at Light the Way.
For sure. Thank you again for having me.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
All right. So now we're on to our final delegation, which is from John Willits, Southampton Branch 155 of the Legion. And he's here. He's actually in the room tonight, and he's brought along a few friends, some familiar faces. Unfortunately, the folks who are watching us by the live stream, come on up, John. Unfortunately, the folks, or Bill's going to do it. All right, Bill then. Sorry, Bill. So we have Bill Streeter and John Willits, and nobody watching online can see you, unfortunately, because we haven't quite got the technology in place yet for that, but we're working on it. But anyway, maybe Bill, what you could do just as you get started is introduce the folks who are familiar faces. You just introduce the folks you brought along with you, so folks following along at home know who you brought along. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lou. I'm only going to do a couple of minutes, and I'll just talk into history, a bit of history, and then John will come up and he'll do the show. Is there anything I'm doing wrong, or is it
Priority.
1, 2, 3?
These technical issues we have, we're ending up with feedback for some reason. I don't know what that is caused. We may just have to bear through it.
Why don't you have Bill come and sit here?
I probably could talk loud enough for everyone in the room to hear me.
Just come and have a seat right there, Bill.
Okay.
And that's got, that way people will see you too. And hopefully it won't feedback.
Right here. Okay.
Bill has just been deputized to council. Everybody meet Councillor Streeter.
Yeah. I thought about it a few times.
That's a big seat to fill, Bill.
All right, Bill, take it away.
Okay. My name is Bill Streeter, and I know most of you. And for those who don't, I've been a member of the Saugeen Shores Heritage Committee for, I don't know, a long time. And a lot of my time has been spent on the military side of things. And John Willits came up with a vision for a cenotaph parquet on the boulevard in Southampton. And it's just a great idea. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of history, and which is what I normally do. There are 84 men who lost their lives from our community. 83 of them in World War I and II, and one of them in the Boer War. And oddly, there's 42 in Port Elgin and Saugeen Township, and 42 in Southampton and Saugeen First Nation in total. And the very first, every fall we hang banners. We hang, this year was 49, 25 in Port Elgin and 24 in Southampton. And that's all the pictures we've been able to find of the 84 that died, the 49. But we did add one new one in Port Elgin this year. And also, I've been able to research and write stories for maybe 60 or 65 of them. and and Sandy Lindsay has published a lot of them in the Saugeen Times, and there's about 55 or 60 that are been published in the Port Elgin Legion, their monthly newsletter. And other ones have been published in the region as well. So, and that I plan on continuing that program as much as I can. Now, the history of memorials in Southampton, and because my ancestors have been there forever, but in 1910, the town built the town hall. Oddly enough, they built a fantastic clock tower, but put no clocks in the clock tower. And it wasn't until 100 years ago, right now, in December of 1922, that the philanthropist, industrialist, politician, C.M. Bowman, raised the funds for memorial clocks in the tower. Now, if you go to the Southampton Town Hall today, right between the two staircases going up into the town hall, there's a small plaque there. And that plaque memorialized and was unveiled that day for the 23 men from Southampton who died in World War I, and the 5 men from Saugeen First Nation who died in World War I. That place became the memorial site for Remembrance Day for probably about 35 years. Okay. And the Legion was formed in the after the Second World War. And in the late 1950s, they came up with an idea of having a stone cairn built down at the eastern tip of the boulevard. Their plan was to put on that plaque on the north side. They'd put get a plaque, and there would be the names of the 10 men who died in World War II from Southampton, and the 4 from Saugeen First Nation. And then on the south side, they would have a plaque that would honor the 28 that had died in World War I. Now, my father was a 39-45 veteran, and he was also the sergeant at arms. He led the parades on Remembrance Day. But more oddly, his sister was also in the army, and she met and married a captain in the Algonquin Regiment from North Bay. And he was part owner of a foundry in North Bay that made bronze and brass fittings for the mining industry. Well, this aunt of mine was a real entrepreneur. She came up with the idea that she would design and sell memorial plaques to legions across Canada. So, as odd as it seems, those 2 plaques in the late 1950s came to Southampton in the trunk of the Streeter family 53 Dodge. And on top of them were the bags of my mom and dad and my 4 younger siblings. I couldn't be there, Luke, because I was at Sparks Corner, stooking grain in a 60-acre field. Okay. So anyway, that little cenotaph has done us really well. But the reality is today, it's broken down. It needs serious work to it. And now's the time to do it. John Willits came with a vision a few years ago, and he's expanded that vision, and it's the one that we're asking for your support for. So thanks. And as they say on TV, here's Johnny.
Well, thank you very much, Bill, for a bit of history lesson there for our community, as well as the personal touch. And I think many of us have our own personal memories of Remembrance Day in the cenotaph, whether that's our mother or father taking us, or maybe through school or with a grandparent. But it's an example, I think, of how Remembrance Day in the cenotaph both bonds both community and personal memories for us in the community. And next slide, please. Now there's the 1916 picture of the Southampton Town Hall. And you'll see one fellow in the very back row with a very bright face on there, third from the left, I guess. Right behind there is where the plaque that Bill is talking about. Next slide, please. Now, this is the view, of course, of the existing cairn and boulevard, and you can see there the height difference between the existing monument, the illuminated cross, and the shrubbery on the boulevard. And really, the area we're talking about expanding is from the cairn on the boulevard still back. And I should add that is owned by the town. Next slide. Now, when doing our homework, and we do want to do this right, we had a chance to look into much of the research that's been done on why do Canadians value cenotaphs and the importance they are in our community. And it came up really with 4 very key things that I thought were quite interesting. The first one is the expression of our collective deep gratitude to the sacrifices made by Canadians who served. Second one, which I thought was very interesting, is recognizing the strong support offered by family and friends of communities at homes. And the more I thought about that, I realized my father-in-law was a farmer, and he explained about how important it was for them to work twice as hard during the war years to generate food, not only for Europe, but for our own servicemen and at home, because the best and brightest had gone off to war. It also reminded me of the plywood factory here in town and the mosquito bombers that so many of our family and friends worked on, and are very proud of the work that they did in those factories across Canada. Third item is the service to serve as a public space for individual reflection and collective remembrance. And fourth, really from an educational point of view, which is encourage understanding of the significance and scope the Canadians played in the world and in our history. Next slide, please. Now this is blank, but the gentleman, the committee that we've put together, and you know well, Bill Streeter, I would like to introduce them. The first, and the gentleman in uniform at the back there, which you at home can't see, is Charles Smarts, and he's the Sergeant at Arms and long-term member of Branch 155, the Southampton Legion, and Mr. Ralph Lynch, the Vice President there as well. And both those gentlemen and I worked tirelessly. And if you may recall the 100 bell ceremony that we had in Southampton in 2018, where we had 100 soldiers on the streets of Southampton. There probably never was, and there probably never will be again, 100 soldiers, and how wonderful that ceremony was. And I don't mind saying it's not easy to get 100 soldiers to come out on a day like that. And we really got some wonderful national profile on that. And kind of selfishly, one of the things was we got a lot of jealous remarks from the surrounding communities, which I was more than okay with. Next slide. Now, this is an example of the 2 photos. The one on the top is the original one, and the one on the bottom is about 100 years later, using those soldiers. And the Southampton Legion gifted those to the museum, as well as they also hang on the wall in a lovely frame, I believe outside the officers' mess at Camp Meaford, as well as on the wall at our Legion. Next slide, please.
So John, we have passed over 10 minutes, so if you could
I beg your pardon?
if we've passed over 10 minutes, so if you could make your way to the nub of the
Oh,
request
okay.
that you have for council, that would be
All
great.
right, I forgot. There, okay, next slide. So in doing our homework, back one, sorry. Next slide, veterans of people that we've looked to when we were doing our homework here. Veterans Affairs Canada has a commemorative partnership program for grants. They also have construction guidelines. We spent a fair bit of time talking with them, as well as other legions who have done monument expansions. We've had monument suppliers actually come out to the site already and had a good look at it. We've also had Ontario Monument Association. The executive director there has 30 years of experience doing just this. And he's taught me everything from how big a foundation to put in based on granite or local sandstone. And we went on for hours and hours, and they've been great council on this particular project. Next slide, please. Now, this is the Terry Fox Monument. One of the suppliers that we were talking to was the president of Ontario Monument Association at one time, and he's been giving us great advice. But this is an example of some of the wonderful work that they do. Next slide, please. Locally, we reached out to get their access and advice from key stakeholders. Mike Myatt, as chair of the Port Elgin Cenotaph Committee, past President Mike Smith, Royal Canadian Branch 155 supporting this, the Veterans Affairs. With the BIA, we have talked to their architect, Jim McDonald, to make sure that the sight lines and our vision aligns with their vision. And we've also reached out to the Saugeen First Nations. Next slide, please. Not to spoil the glory that Bill tried to bestow upon me, but this isn't an original thought on my part. You can see there the date's 1984. Even almost 40 years ago, there were discussions about the expansion of the cenotaph and the monument on the boulevard. Next slide, please. Now, this is one of the examples, very modest one. That's a kind of a side view on it. You can see the existing cenotaph. The big black line is the illuminated cross, and then there's the mother and daughter there. And I guess you see the little arrow, and that's where we would propose pushing back the existing garden and putting in an additional display. Next slide, please. So we did quite a bit of homework here and looked at a bunch of different designs. Next slide, please. Now, this one happens to be in the village of Flesherton. And one of the interesting things about this one is on the back side of it, there's on the front is the list of those that died. On the back is the list of all those in the community that served. Next slide, please. Another beautiful example of bronze plaque and sandstone. And as we went through our homework and then looking at all these different designs and ideas, next slide, please. We came across Vimy Ridge. Now, I've been lucky enough to be there a couple of times. I know Bill has at least once. And one of the things that came across when you do take that tour is the importance, the symbolism of the two columns. The outreached arms in selfless service. One of the discussions was, to you from falling hands, we pass the torch, yours to be held high. Ascension is another one. Holding high the principles and values of our flag and country. Next slide, please. Now, this is a top-down view of it. I just wanted to highlight those two black little dots there. And again, these two columns or two spires idea is just a concept. That's not the actual kind of final format that has to be determined yet. Whether it happens to be whether we use local limestone, which would be wonderful, or the traditional gray granite like they used in Port Elgin. Now, I'm going to get to the kind of fun part here. The next slide is an example of giving someone a tool who doesn't know how to use it. And that's my best example at intersecting these two columns into that boulevard. And really, they should go back a little bit farther. But that kind of gives you an idea of the angle trajectory going up with the cairn, the cross, the potentially new monuments, and the Canadian flag behind it. Next slide, please. That kind of gives you an example more of the slope, an idea of the increasing in height. Also, those two columns. Next slide, please. That's a front view. Again, that has to be done by an architect, which I am not, or an architectural technologist. But again, you see the idea of the stepping back from the stage and the Canadian flag up above that. Next slide, please. Now, next slide, please. Again, we'll do another one. Now, depending on how much we're actually able to serve, there's quite a bit of flexibility in terms of the design, starting with these two columns in a low relief carving you see there on the left in granite, maple leaf from a gravestone. In the center, you see I can't remember what he's called, the Brooding Soldier, which is in Belgium. And on the right, that is again at Vimy Ridge, but that one is called Mother Canada. Next slide, please. A beautiful rendering in that, but that has a lot to. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And if our fundraising does not go according to plan, we can go back to something more modest like this. And my last slide, please. As I said, we don't take this project lightly. And our ask is we are seeking both your enthusiastic time and talents, but also funding in this budget year and next. We'd like you to work with this committee and restore and enhance the existing environment. And that's about it. The strategy we're talking about is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 in terms of our funding. I hope you've had a chance to look at the correspondence that we sent to the CAO some weeks ago. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I hope that in the design, you can find a way to make sure it doesn't snow like that on Remembrance Day, because as you can see from me and Cheryl and everybody else down there, it didn't look like an awful lot of fun. Anyway, is there questions or comments from members of the Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and John. Thanks very much for your presentation, Charlie and Ralph and Bill, and just a great initiative. I remember back in 2007, we started the Port Elgin Cenotaph project. And I remember putting security cameras there in 2008, a bit of vandalism happening, but it's a wonderful cenotaph. And, community volunteers came together and helped build that. I know the council of the day did make a contribution, and a lot of community fundraising happened as well. And anytime the community could raise $160,000, ask for 80,000, 66 cent dollars, 33 cent dollars, I guess. It's always something that I like to take a look at. The groups, come with their hand out versus they're willing to work for it. And I think rejuvenating that boulevard there would be a wonderful, wonderful thing to do, for Southampton, for Saugeen Shores. And I wish you all the well. I think that's what we're looking at, John. The ask, I think, is 240,000 for the total project. You're looking at raising 160 and you're asking this council for $40,000 a year for 2 years.
One third, $80,000 spread over 2 years.
Over
We'd
2
like
years,
something
so-
right now and then.
So it's something that I'm sure, Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming this might be brought forward in January, February budget discussions to our CEO, and it's budget requests are getting a little bit late, but I think you're just on time probably for at least for us to discuss it. So it's something I certainly look forward to supporting in some form. We don't know the exact amount yet, but once we get to discuss your budget, we'll make that determination in terms of the number. But I'll be supporting some form of contribution. That's for sure. Just a wonderful initiative. I just want to thank you for what you're doing. I think it's going to be really nice for our community.
Okay, thank you. The Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. John, can you just push off your mic there? Thank you. It's less feedback. The presentation was very appreciated. The idea is great. I too have been to Vimy and it's pretty inspiring, those 2 columns, and very humbling to stand there. So it would be great to have something akin to that feeling from the cenotaph in Southampton. I was recently at the BIA annual general meeting in Southampton, and they presented some drawings of potential streetscape projects over the next few years. And one of them was on the corner where the cenotaph is. And I did suggest to somebody there that that'd be a great corner to start with, because I thought it would certainly grab the public's attention and public engagement and support and all that kind of stuff right off the get-go. And it looked lovely. So I know you mentioned the BIA. I hope we're able to tie the 2 things together, because that would be a great place to start for some downtown Southampton improvements, to do the whole corner, including what you're talking about. Thank you very much for the presentation, all of you.
Do you have a comment, John?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I don't know whether I mentioned it in my presentation, but in working with the BIA and getting their support, as well as the Friends of the Flag support, we did get a chance to spend an hour on the phone with Jim McDonald, their architect, to ensure that the sight lines and the character of it was in line with that vision.
Okay, Councillor Mayette and then Davinsky.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, John, nice to see you again, my friend. Great presentation. I really agree with what you're trying to do. We spend a lot of time there in the summertime at the car show, and I've got to look at that monument quite close and on numerous occasions, and certainly it is due. And as your earliest slide indicated, many people have thought so for a long, long time. I like your design, which pays homage to Vimy Ridge. That's certainly one of the gemstones in the world for Canadians, and every Canadian should try and be there at some point or other. it's certainly on my bucket list. Could you just perhaps for my own benefit and those listening perhaps in council, give us a range of what the possible budgets might be for what you have in mind? I know you did say that depending on fundraising that there were grander and lesser plans, like a plan A, plan B kind of thing. So maybe just touch on that briefly and give us an idea of what we're looking at. Thanks.
Yes, when we were doing our homework, we spent quite a bit of time with the executive director of the Monument Association, who had 30 years of experience and had great visibility into what was involved. And we shared basically the slideshow that we showed to you this evening with him as we worked through the project. And we went through everything from the classic column that we're talking about, and we discussed whether it would be in granite or hopefully in local limestone. I think it would be wonderful and it's great for carving. But all those are quite broad variables. But we believe that $240,000 total would be a reasonable target. This is not something that this is going to be there for a long time, and it's not something that we want to do twice. We want to make sure that we get it done properly and that we invest appropriately in it. So we're taking 240 in division in thirds, 1/3 from the town, 1/3 fundraising, and possibly 1/3 from grants from the Veterans Affairs Canada.
Okay, Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, John. Thank you for the presentation. And Bill Streeter, thank you for your presentation as well. The question I would ask, you say $240,000. If the town dealt with this at the upcoming budgets, and there's still time for that, what's the timeline for the Legion in getting this project off the ground and done?
So this is a community committee. This is not a Legion committee. And part of our because there were so many different stakeholders, as I mentioned in my list, it was appropriate for it to be arm's length. They're a trusted advisor. They're key in going forward with this. But the truth is that the property and the monument is owned by the town. It's owned by you guys. So we're actually kind of imposing on you quite a bit that way. Your question again?
My question is the timeline.
Yes, of course. So one of the things we thought about was breaking up that contribution of 80,000 to possibly 20,000 to assist with us getting going with the project, and the remainder in the second year.
Okay, but you're not telling me when would the building start? When would people see things happening? When will it be
I
done?
think that, and I'll just interject here, if you don't mind, if you guys could turn your mics off for me, thanks. What we're doing here today is we're hearing from these gentlemen a proposal for an idea to advance, and now I think this is when the work would begin after this to start to talk with municipal staff. And I think what we need to do at this point is sort of loop in our staff, Department of Community Services Operations, other staff, because as the deputy mayor rightly raised, we also have this Southampton Streetscape project that the BIA is running underway. And I think what has to happen now is to dovetail all that work and also think about the rest of the things the municipality is responsible for in that space: underground infrastructure, staging of the BIA's project, ensuring that if the streetscape gets redesigned, that it doesn't somehow mess up the sight lines on the cenotaph, or we end up with some conflict that we don't want. We want it all to be seamless. We want it all to work together. We want it all to be good. And so what we need to do now is get these gentlemen, John and his community group, together with our staff and start to have the detailed discussion about those things. And then what will come out of that is more information for council about the timelines. And I think, and probably more detailed budgets. I mean, what we have now is what kind of a high level estimate, but we need to get into more detail about what needs to be done and what the specifics are. So what I guess that's a long-winded way of saying you're going to get more information on that, John, and it's going to come as a result of a little bit more work. Is that satisfactory?
Will have to be, thank you.
Okay. John, do you have a comment?
If I do, and it's kind of embarrassing because I think I came in front of the council here in when I was president of the Legion some 3 or 4 years ago, and those are papers say 1984. My emotional target would be for 2024 for a completion date, but that would be a target. But the steps in the way have to be covered.
Mr. Mayor, that's what I was looking for, just a ballpark. Nobody's married to it and so on.
Yeah, I think it's just very important, and I think it's a great project, and obviously everybody, I agree with everybody's comments. It's something that we want to do, but it's just very important that we don't set expectations today until we know what has to be done, and also that BIA project, which is critical to the business community, gets done and all that lines up. So I think I just want to be, I don't want to have hard and fast dates out there just yet until we get that detailed discussion happening and make sure that we do it right. But more important than doing it on a particular day is doing it right. So anyway, but I hope, John, that you and your team will connect with our staff. I'm sure you already have, and and maybe perhaps our staff can become a little bit more involved with your committee in the near term to finalize that work. I'm sure that's something you're agreeable to.
Yes, we have had Frank Burrows has actually been to site, and we had talked about the concept in the past, as well as Jane Jagalewski back in there. So there has been a painting of the picture. We've even had a retired traffic specialist go through and do sightlines to make sure what we were planning didn't obstruct.
Well, that's very good. Well, we appreciate all of you taking the time to come in here this evening, and we're very much looking forward to those next steps and that work taking place. And it sounds like there's lots of support around this table for moving a project forward. So thank you. Have a good night. Okay, so then we'll move on to we're going to move quite a ways down the agenda, don't we? Here we go to 8.6 communications for action. And there's one letter there. It's a letter from me to Dr. Patel, who is in charge of well water testing with the Ministry of the Environment. And so I'm just looking for support from council for that letter. This is a critical, important issue for those folks in our community who have well water and are having difficulty accessing testing in a location which is convenient since that service has since been withdrawn from the local hospitals and now isn't available locally at all. It's actually an issue that was first raised by Councillor Mayette, and I'm sure you'll have a comment. So I'll turn it over to you, Councillor Mayette. Saw your hand up there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. I just want to express my support for you keeping a keen eye on that issue. It's been over a year since we first brought this to the attention of the health unit that this service was lacking and required. And so thank you for keeping up on that, and hopefully that letter gets in front of the eyes that it needs to get in front of, so that we actually get a service available to ours and our neighboring, our communities, like you indicate in your letter. So thank you.
And I would just make, oh yeah, Councillor Dominski.
I support this as well, Mr. Mayor. I have one question though. Why wasn't, and there may be a reason for it, why wasn't Lisa Thompson CC'd on this letter?
Yeah, she can be. What we can do is copy her on our support. I was going to make a suggestion just now to include the County of Bruce on this on our resolution of support if we pass one here, as well as to send our resolution of support to the Board of Health. So we could also send it to Minister Thompson, and then that would send the whole letter to her as well. It's a good suggestion, something we could do right now.
Okay, thank you.
So is there, can I take that Councillor Mayette and Councillor Davinsky as a mover and seconder to endorse the letter? And is there consensus that it be copied to those folks who I just listed? Yes? Did you have a comment? Okay, you're good with that? And Don, is that clear enough? Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I'll ask all in favor of that. That's carried. All right, thank you for that. So now we're on to communications and petitions for information. There are 10 items there. Any comments on any of those items, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And through you, this is to the CAO. I saw this afternoon that Bill 23 or part of it did make its way through the legislature. I realize you haven't had any time to digest. I was just curious if it had stayed fairly intact from what we'd heard last week.
Thank you for the question. I think there's probably about 7 or 8 changes that are kind of high level, but staff needs some time to go through the entirety of the bill and make sure where all those changes have happened. But there were some changes that reflected from the previous versions we had seen.
Wasn't even enough time for our letter to get there, I don't think, by standard postage, so. Any other comments, any of these other 10 items or of these 10 items? The deputy mayor?
I noticed in the SMART minutes, the board meeting minutes from September the 30th, there was mention made of a county initiative to do a transit report for the county. I just was wanting to know if you knew anything about that and what that might include for Saugeen Shore.
Yeah, so the county is reviewing possibilities or opportunities for transit in the county. And so that work is, I think that project is now started or just started. And so you'll be hearing more about it over the coming months. And what they're doing is examining opportunities to provide transit across the county. So it would include Saugeen Shores and all other municipalities and hopefully connections to important destinations outside of the county as well. But I mean, that's all still very much at the early stages and yet to be determined, but it is work that's underway right now. Sorry, Councillor Mayette.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, one of the communications that caught my eye was the letter that we got from Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Honorable Steve Clark, where he brings up the issue of Bill 23 and of course asks us as new councillors or a new council to support those changes. And certainly the bill isn't completely against what we're trying to do, but there, as was pointed out at our recent committee of the whole meeting last week, there are a number of what are looked at as shortcomings. It's not a one glove or one shoe fits all size kind of situation. And some of the things that are being suggested aren't necessarily in the best interest of small municipalities. And to that end, I heard on the radio or on the news this week that there was a group of the Municipal Planners Association of Ontario were banding together and lobbying the minister and the government for that matter, I guess, to have a relook at some of those issues. And I'm just wondering if there's anybody from our staff, because I know that Jay Posner did a terrific job summarizing the highlights and what were perceived to be pros and cons to us last week. And certainly his input, I would think, would be very valuable to that organization, presuming that he is a member of that organization, of course, and so maybe is our CAO.
CAO to comment.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think we have 3 employees on staff that are members of the Ontario Professional Planning Institute. And so, yes, all of us are highly engaged in what's happening with Bill 23 and commenting to the province. So that association, as well as others like AMO, are participating in creating comments to the province. So yeah, we are engaged with all of those.
Good to hear.
Yeah, it seems that the province is absolutely committed to implementing these changes. And so I think the best thing for us to do is turn our attention to how we will implement them and do it in a way that makes sense for us. And luckily we have lots of well-qualified planners to help us to do that. And so I'm sure that's why I know that's going to be a significant subject of discussion around this table for the coming months as we try to grapple with those changes and implement them. Councillor Help.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I think it's important to keep the pressure on the provincial government. I think this provincial government has been known to backtrack, has been known to change things, and I think we just really need to keep the pressure up on them in all ways that we can, would be my comment.
Yep, well, and thanks for that. And certainly they're going to get our letter hopefully soon, and we'll be making more comments. Important not to forget that there are another couple of tranches of changes proposed with comment dates going out, and so there'll be other opportunities for us to comment. And actually, as I said last time, some chances for us to make some comments earlier in the process on some of these things because they're asking for our input before they structure the legislation on some of these changes, which I think is a much more positive way for them to approach this. So certainly we'll be providing comments as part of that, but point well taken. Are there other comments at this time? Don't, oh, do you have one, Councilor Mayette?
Yes, thank you, Mr. One more, I also caught the other piece of correspondence that caught my eye, of course, was the one from the Premier of Ontario, the Right Honorable Doug Ford, and his overarching message to the new council seems to be that the provincial government is under significant funding pressures, and for not only for transfer payments perhaps, but for schools. And I wonder if I hope that that's not setting the scene for more bad news, that perhaps we might not be receiving the same level of support from the province that we're at least accustomed to or hoping for. And it kind of dovetails into our next item, which is or next item, sorry, I guess, which is our report on the third quarter variances and the status of our own affairs, because those may become more important. Than they are obviously very important as it is, but those might become significant numbers for us to concentrate on going forward if we don't see transfers or support from the upper tiers. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I would just note that it's important that to note the fact that transfers from the province are remaining pretty steady into 2023. We received our allocation for OMPF, which is up a little bit over 2022. And also other grant funding is flowing to the police just recently and some other things. So I wouldn't, I think as in everything, we want to be balanced in our approach to the province. And I wouldn't suggest that we ought to be too concerned or too critical of them in terms of funding at this point. I think we are receiving the funding that we have been receiving, and it's all indications for 2023 at least point to a continuation of that. So any other comments on correspondence? I don't see any. So the next item there is item 9, reports of municipal officers and policy. And I have my report there, and I just draw your attention to my, speaking of education, my letter to the Blue Water District School Board on education on elementary school space in Saugeen Shores. It's an issue we'll continue to press on, and hopefully we'll get a meeting with Blue Water on that issue and get some information about what work they're doing to plan for additional elementary school space in town. So that's just there for your information. And item 10 then is an information report on the third quarter 2022 variance to budget. And there's the treasurer and the director of what are you the director of, Jim? The director of corporate services.
Corporate services.
Director of corporate services and the treasurer. So we'll turn it over to you, Jim, to start the presentation.
Well, thank you very much. For those of you who haven't met Daniel before, I'd like to introduce him and have him take us through the report. He's our CFO and treasurer for the town.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jim. Third quarter operating results for the corporation have been prepared, and this report summarizes those results for council information and awareness. The body of the report summarizes overall results and highlights particular items that are identified that will produce true variances at year end. In the appendix, operating results for each department are broken into 3 categories: revenue, salaries and benefits, and expenses. Looking at the results in the appendix, it's seen that higher than budgeted revenue is the largest contributor to the overall variance. This revenue above budget is primarily from water, wastewater, landfill, and building revenues. Salaries and benefits are showing as roughly $600,000 below expectation, primarily due to staff vacancies and new positions being filled later in the year than anticipated. Though the overall variance through 3 quarters is quite large at $2.6 million, a substantial portion of the budget surplus is attributed to self-funded areas which do not draw taxation funds or impact the tax rate. Those areas include water, wastewater, building, emergency operations, and a combined grouping of garbage, recycling, and landfill. The body of the report also mentions 3 corporate items affecting the variance. supplemental taxation above budget from completed MPAC assessments on new builds, interest income above budget from a higher interest rate environment, and unexpected WSIB rebate income. And all of those items have a favorable impact and also explain the total, or help to explain the total variance. These results are preliminary in nature, but the town roughly expects the shown surplus to be available at year end to be transferred to appropriate reserves and positively impact the town's ability to pay for future services and infrastructure. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions from council.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my question, Daniel, at your fingertips, would you happen to have the supplementary taxation number for maybe send them to me, or all of council perhaps for 2020, 2021, and what's projected for 2022? I see supplemental taxation, $218,000 favorable. So have we actually received that number already, Daniel, for 2022? Is that what you're saying, or is that a 2021 number?
It's a 2022 number, and it's showing that we are 218,000 above budget for this point in the year. So the total supplemental taxation budget for the year was 300,000. I believe that at year end will be somewhere in the $500,000 to $550,000 range. That is higher than the last couple of years even. So that's a budget that we've been increasing basically each year, but we're still running above that.
That's the number I was looking at, Mr. Mayor. So $550,000 by year end for supplemental income is what taxation, what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And Daniel, do we just refresh my memory in the 2022 budget? Do we budget to supplemental taxation? Do we take a portion of that and build that right into our budget now? We never used to, but we kind of offset some of our expenses at year end with supplemental taxation. So that all gets transferred over into tax stabilization, correct? The tax
Correct.
stabilization reserve. So do we actually budget to that number now? Any portion of that 550? Is it the part of the budget line?
It is. We now budget 300,000 in the 2022 budget.
I got you. Never used to do that a few years back. We just start that a few years ago.
Yeah, it was started recently. I believe it was started at maybe 150,000 and slowly has gone up from there over the last couple of years.
The 550 is a healthy number. It's the biggest we've seen, I guess, correct? In the last 5 years, no doubt.
Correct.
Yeah, so that augurs well for the 2023 budget. It's going to help. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, further questions or comments to this report? Yeah, Councilor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I noticed the building permit revenue is higher than estimated. And I'm just going to put in a little ask that building stats be presented monthly and given to the media like we did in the past. And it's a good news story. And the practice was followed, but it appears to be gone by the wayside for some reason. I asked once before and nothing happened, I don't think. And I don't even think it has anything to do with this, but I wanted to put in my plug.
I don't recall was us ever releasing building stats monthly, but we can turn it over to the CEO because there is a report that includes those stats well, she can tell us how frequently.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And through you, Mr. Mayor, we do produce an annual report in around the end of January, beginning of February that summarizes the previous year. That is then released to the media with the entire year's statistics.
Okay, so we have to wait a year before we get an idea, or before the community gets an idea of how we're doing, because we're always doing well. And I thought it would be one of those things that we want to get out there and tell the people about the good news.
It's a matter of the fact that generating reports takes time, and it's a balance between a pretty small staff and how much effort we want them generating reports and how much effort we want them doing this work. I think there's going to be, the staff is developing KPIs, and those KPI reports will come to us. And so so for the building department, some of the key performance indicators will be the stats and how many permits they're issuing, and we'll receive reports. And I suspect that'll be reported more frequently than annually. Yes, Kara?
Thank you for the question and the reminder. Yeah, so in 2023, we'll be bringing forward those key performance indicators, and council will be reporting on them quarterly to you then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, are there further questions for the treasurer? I don't see. Well, thank you very much for that report, Daniel. It's nice to see that we're in a positive position on some of these things. And it also indicates, as always, that you've produced a conservative budget in 2022, which has, I think, put us in a position where we know what our that our income and expenses are going to be going to turn out this way on the positive side of the ledger. So thank you for that report. On the question of supplemental taxation, I think that approach of putting ourselves in a position where we aren't getting too close to the top of that number, leaving some room. Don't try to take it all in the budget, because you may be disappointed in a year, since it's a number that's difficult to predict. So I think we've found ourselves in a good sweet spot there, and appreciate your work on that. I think I saw Councillor Stack put her hand up. Councillor Stack.
Yeah, sorry, I was just wondering, in light of the Bill 23, if we've started thinking about if there's a change in how we're going to budget in light of the potential shortfall in funding based on what it looks like that bill is going to generate for municipalities.
CAO.
We're going to need a bit of time. I think like today it was at 4 o'clock. So yeah, we'll be thinking about it for sure, but we'll need some time to consider the impacts.
Yeah, I'm sure it will have an impact. Some of them are longer term, like development charges, which will be picked up eventually, but will take a little time to flush through the system and for us to figure out exactly what those impacts will be. But I think you can rest assured that Daniel and Jim and Kara and their team will be paying close attention to those changes and whatever impacts they are. But we're soon going to be having budget discussions for 2023, and we can get into all this detail a lot more when that happens. So anyway, but for now, thank you, Daniel and Jim, for the presentation. Okay, so now we do have a close to public, which we added to the agenda, and I just have to find the resolution. There is a resolution. It says here that council moving to close. I'm going to change that on to committee. So the resolution is that committee move into close to public session to discuss matters in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001, section 2392. B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Stack. All in favor of that? That's carried. All right. We'll go into closed, and the clerk will let us
Mr.
know.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I received the updated agenda in the email, but I don't believe it contained a separate Zoom link for me to log into the closed session.
Just ask the clerk.
Sorry, I did send it to you, Dave, so I can resend it
Okay.
now if you'd like.
Oh, you did send it? Let me have a look and see. Oh, sorry, there it is. It was just down a couple of layers. Sorry, carry on then.
So we'll log out of this Zoom link and log into the closed one.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Okay, then. So we're ready now to rise from closed, and I will report that council approved the minutes, and that we also received a report from the striking committee. And I guess Don, so it's important to note that although we didn't announce it when we went into close, that the minutes of, what were the date of the minutes?
For you, Mayor Charbonneau, these were closed meeting minutes from September 26th.
Yeah, so for the information, the public council did consider the closed meeting minutes of September the 26th, and that we did approve those minutes. Okay. So that moves us then on to adjournment, and I'll take a motion to adjourn. All right, moved by, actually, you know what I did? I skipped over statements by members. Sorry about that. So we will take statements by members. We'll start with the deputy mayor. Do you have anything tonight?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Two things. I just wanted to recognize that there's a great sign in the Plex lobby about how it's not the NHL and to be nice and participate both on the ice and off the ice. And I just wanted to comment that I happened to be in the Southampton Coliseum last night for a house league game, the under-9 fellas, and the stands looked to me to be 3/4 full. Good crowd for the kids, but it was very interesting to see the level of support, because of course the boys on the ice were just learning a number of things, one of which was offside. So as a couple of calls happened, as it continued to happen, everybody in the stands started to yell, "Get back over the line." It didn't matter which side it was. So it was a very good collaborative coaching moment at the Coliseum. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that I wanted to publicly thank the former deputy clerk, Tracy Edwards, who was with the town of Saugeen Shores for almost 17 years. It would have been 17 years coming up in January. And she provided unbelievable support to both the Heritage Committee and the Accessibility Committees over a lot of those years. And she also was very, very involved in election work. In particular, the last election, she did most of the legwork and grunt work herself. So she has moved on from the town of Saugeen Shores, and I just wanted to publicly thank her for her service. 17 years is a long time there, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank a couple of community groups. First of all, the tree lighting ceremony. We did a great job lighting up the wonderful tree at the Coulter Plaza with a group of kids that showed up and pulled the lever, and it was a nice night. We're very well attended, actually, and so thank you to the BIA for organizing that event, and Jordan McKinnon. And the Port Elgin Parade, walked in it with you last Saturday night, and it was boy, gee, there was thousands of people lining the streets with the Port Elgin Parade and Santa Claus Parade. And Saugeen Shores Rotary, thanks so much. It's not an easy job organizing one of those parades. A lot of entries. Very colorful, and nothing better than a night parade. So thank you, Saugeen Shores Rotary, and to the members of the public. I think they really enjoyed it. Ton of people, and a lot of fun.
Thank you. We'll go then to Councillor Mayette.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't got a great deal of report. We did have just for those who are interested in the fishing community, we did have a fishing meeting, and the slate of officers were elected for another year, and I was honored to be named president for the next year for the Lake Huron Fishing Club. And another fishing story, there's a group that operates out of, well, in this case, they were in Southampton because they had a fishing tournament on the weekend at the Saugeen River. They're called Steel Dreams, and they're led by our Vice President, Cody Buchanan, and they had a one-day fishing tournament, and they were able to raise $10,000 amongst a group of fishermen in one day, and 5,000 of that went to the Lake Huron Fishing Club for our hatchery operation, and the other 5,000 was divided up amongst 6 or 7 other charities, including Women's House, including Saugeen Memorial Hospital Foundation, Owen Sound Hospital Foundation, and various other groups like that. I haven't got the list right in front of me, but suffice to say, fishermen doing great deeds for their community. Keep them in mind. They're an important part of our community, an important part of our economy. Thank you.
And congratulations on returning as chair of the club. Councillor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that I attended, as did you, and as did the deputy mayor, the annual general meeting of the Southampton BIA, and we got an updated look at the streetscape plan that might be coming into play in the years ahead. And I'm kind of excited about it. Now I'm kind of excited to get this thing on the rails again and get moving. So we have a meeting with the renewal committee this Thursday, I believe, at 3 o'clock. And so we'll be moving ahead. Now, chronologically, okay, bear with me. Can you see that? There you go. That's just the, although it says Toronto Maple Leafs, it's just a reminder that tomorrow the Saugeen Shores Winterhawks are playing a rare Tuesday night game. And we're inviting everybody out. They're playing against Shallow Lake Crushers, and that's always a great game. So come on out and see the Hawks and see the Crushers. And I think you'll enjoy the game if you've never been out there. Okay, second thing now. Can you see that? Okay, that's my Christmas time. And that's to remind you that Santa isn't finished with Saugeen Shores yet. He will be back on Friday to take part in the Southampton Santa Claus Parade. And we look forward to him visiting. There will be hundreds out lining the streets, I'm sure. And I might add, it's a shorter parade. From what I've read, it starts at Victoria Street now. And we'll head down to High Street, down to the disembarkment area at Grosvenor, I believe. So it starts at 7 o'clock. Make sure you come out and support the Southampton Parade and support the retailers that put on and help put on the Southampton Parade with the Saugeen Rotary. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. I'm glad you said something, or I would have been on Gray Street wondering where the parade was. And extra points to you for the props. Councillor Halpin. Anything tonight? Nothing tonight? Okay. Councillor Stack, anything from you?
Yeah, just two quick things. So just I was able to attend the tree lighting on Friday night. I thought it was great. I wanted to recognize the dancers. I thought their rhythm was far better than certainly mine at that age or present day. And I promised my partner's daughter I would recognize that she got 100% on her math quiz today. So I thought I'd put it on the public record. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the town of Saugeen Shores, offer her our congratulations. And would you have something? Oh, no. Councillor Halpin.
I watched the Port Elgin parade and I saw you guys. I noticed you didn't throw me any candy, but I was attending the parade with a family of new Canadians, and I can just tell you how impressed they were, and what a wonderful thing for them to see in their very early time in our community. So thanks for that.
That's awesome. Thanks for letting us know about that. Yeah, I would just one thing, most of the things that I've done have been mentioned, but the one thing I was at that wasn't mentioned was the annual general meeting of the Marine Heritage Society and Propeller Club last week, and they gave a good rundown of all of their myriad of accomplishments over this last year. The Front Range Light, great tours out to the island, got those going again, the Marine Heritage Festival. Really, it's just an incredible group of people in our community. And I wanted to just recognize them and also recognize Mike Sterling, who's got a new book out. We Were Here, which is a great retelling of the story of the restoration of the Chantry Island Lighthouse and all the people who were involved and all of the incredible work that was done. I was really honored to get a copy of the book along with former Mayor Mike Smith and from Vicky Tamori last week, and I've had a chance to read most of it. And it's really just this great book. So anybody who gets an opportunity should go. I believe it'll be available at Tour Base likely in other places, but make sure if you can get a copy of that book and support the Marine Heritage Society and read that great history. Really exciting and positive stuff. So that brings us to the end of the committee of the whole. Is there a mover and seconder to adjourn? Moved by Stack, seconded by Davinsky. All in favor? The committee stands adjourned, and we will reconvene at council at 8:30.
Morgan, we're ready to go live.
Okay, everything good, Don? We're ready to go. Okay, thank you. Then I will now call to order this regular council meeting and we'll move on to additions, deletions, amendments to the agenda. And we have one addition to the agenda, and it's 3.1. That item 8.1 report of municipal officers 2022-2024 committee appointments be added to the November 28th, 2022 council agenda. And that item 10.2 bylaws, bylaw number 98, 2022, appointment of committee of adjustment and property standards committee be added to the November 28th, 2022 council agenda. Is there a mover and seconder for that resolution? The vice deputy mayor, the deputy mayor, all in favor of that? That's carried. Okay, thank you. So now we are on to disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'll ask any member if you have a pecuniary interest you have to declare on this agenda. Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are about to pass committee appointments. And my wife, Ann Vavra Davinsky, is one of those appointees to the Accessibility Committee. And I will give up the seat as you vote accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other pecuniary interests to declare? Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no public meetings, so that moves us on to adoption of the minutes. And I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of October 11, 2022, and the inaugural council meeting of November 15, 2022, and note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of October 11, 2022, as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? So we'll just give me 1 second there. Council adopt the minutes. Yeah, all right. So take mover and seconder, moved by Councilor the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Davinsky. Now I'd like to suggest there are some issues, just a couple of missing items in those October 11, 2022 minutes. So I would suggest at this point, if council would be willing to defer the October 11th, 2022 minutes, and we will consider them at a future meeting once the clerk's had a chance just to make a couple of corrections to them. Can I get a motion to defer the October 11th? The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Stack. So all in favor of the deferral? That's carried. So we will defer October 11th. So we are now just considering on a motion by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Davinsky, that we adopt the inaugural meeting minutes of November 15th and note and file the committee of the whole of October 11th. Was it committee of the whole? Which one did I do? I've got them. I got it right. Okay. Okay. Everyone clear? I muddled that up really badly. So if you're not clear, I wouldn't blame you in the least. We're considering council of November 15th, committee of the whole October 11th. If there's nothing further, we're considering a council meeting November 15th, committee of the whole October 11th, and we have deferred council October 11th. Okay. I think I spit it out okay there that time. All right, all in favor? That's carried. Just make a note here. Okay. So now we are on to we're on to our report then, right? And that comes in at 8.1. Yeah. So we have a report now of municipal officers and committees. And the report is in relation to the 2022-2024 committee appointments. You have a resolution on that one, Don?
Mr. Mayor, which one are we on now?
We're on the one that 8.1.
8.1. Okay, I'll leave the room.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. So we do have a report and I have a recommendation that the 2022-2024 committee appointments be approved. That's a recommendation from the striking committee. Is there a mover and seconder first and foremost for that? Moved by Help and seconded by Stack. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, then all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we can bring back in Councillor Davinsky. Comes. All right. All right, so a couple of things here then. We do have, we're on to item 10, bylaws. We have 3 bylaws to consider. One of them I have a pecuniary interest with. That is bylaw 96-2022 with relation to Miramichi Shores. I have a pecuniary interest because I am a shareholder in a company which owns land adjacent to the development. So what I would suggest we do is consider the 2 bylaws or the 3 bylaws separately. We'll consider bylaw 96 and bylaw we'll consider bylaw 96 on its own and consider bylaw 98 on its own, because Councillor Davinsky will have Councillor Davinsky's your pecuniary interest won't apply to 98 because your wife has not been appointed to the Committee of Adjustment, so no problem there. Okay, so I will vacate the chair and we'll turn it over to the Deputy Mayor, who will read bylaw 96.
Okay, 10.1 is bylaw 96-2022, the pre-servicing agreement with Miramichi Shores Land Development Limited. And it reads that the following bylaw is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 28th day of November 2022. 96-2022 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a subdivision pre-servicing agreement with Miramichi Shores, Land Development Limited. And I'd look for a mover and a seconder. Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt and Councillor Stack. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. I'll call back in the mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're on to bylaw 98, and I have a resolution that the following bylaw is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 28th day of November 2022. That's 298-2022, being a bylaw to appoint members to the Committee of Adjustment and Property Standards Committee. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Stack. Any discussion, questions or comments? The Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the purposes of the bylaw, should we indicate the names?
We certainly can. Give me a second and I can give you the names.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, so the individuals who we are appointing by this bylaw are the Deputy Mayor, the Vice Deputy Mayor, Councillor Stack, and members of the public, Mr. Michael Martin, Mr. Richard Beckett, Ms. Nancy Darlington Smith, and Mr. Chad Zimmerman. Okay. Questions or comments on the bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you. So that takes us down then to the confirmatory bylaw. And I have a resolution that bylaw 97-2022, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 28th day of November 2022. Is there a mover and seconder? By Stack, seconded by Halpin. All in favor? That's carried. And finally, I have a resolution. This regular council meeting of November 28th, 2022 hereby adjourns at 8:43 p.m. Mover and seconder. Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Halpin. All in favor? Council stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.